He was one of the richest men in the city, but nothing prepared him for what he saw in his own living room that afternoon. Michael Harrison, a self-made millionaire, had built his empire on discipline, control, and routine. Every day was the same schedule, same meetings, same late nights. But that day, he came home 3 hours early, and what he witnessed inside his mansion broke him emotionally. Not because of betrayal, not because of theft, but because of love he never expected from the woman he barely noticed, his black maid, Ruth Johnson. What she was doing when she thought no one was watching would change Michael's life forever. Michael Harrison's mornings were always the same. The alarm rang at 5:30 a.m., not because he needed it, but because discipline was the only thing he trusted anymore. He opened his eyes in a massive king-size bed inside a bedroom bigger than most people's apartments. Glass walls, silk curtains, city skyline glowing in the distance. Luxury surrounded him, but silence filled the room. No good morning, no laughter, no warm voice calling his name. Just the soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant noise of traffic below. Michael sat up slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. Another day, another million-dollar deal, another empty victory. As he walked through the hallway, his footsteps echoed against the marble floors. Every painting on the wall was worth thousands. Every piece of furniture was imported, but none of it felt like home. The house was clean, perfect, organized, too perfect. Downstairs, Ruth, the black maid, was already working quietly. She wore the same simple uniform, hair neatly tied back, eyes calm but tired. She had been here for 12 years. Michael walked past her without stopping. "Good morning," he said, without looking. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," Ruth replied softly. Their daily conversation ended right there. No smiles, no small talk, no connection, just routine. Michael entered his home office, huge glass desk, 3 monitors, stock market charts moving non-stop. On the wall hung a framed photo, Michael and Sarah, smiling, young, in love. He paused for a moment, just 1 second. Then he turned away, because remembering hurt more than forgetting. His phone buzzed. "Sir, your 9 a.m. meeting is confirmed. Your flight to New York is ready. Investors are waiting." Michael straightened his suit. Emotions off, business mode on. That was how he survived. In the kitchen, breakfast was waiting. Fresh fruits, coffee, perfectly cooked eggs. But Michael barely touched it. He scrolled through emails instead. Ruth stood quietly nearby, wiping the counter. She watched him, not with judgment, but with understanding. She knew loneliness. She had lived with it her whole life. Michael finally stood up. "Cancel dinner tonight," he told his assistant on the phone. "Working late again." Another night, another empty house. As Michael walked out, his eyes briefly caught something in the hallway. A small photo frame. Sarah smiling in the garden. He hesitated. His jaw tightened. Then he turned away. Because strong men don't cry. They work. They build empires. They stay silent. After the door closed, the mansion became silent again. Only Ruth remained. She stood still for a moment. Then she slowly walked to the photo. She gently cleaned the frame. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Good morning, Miss Sarah. He still misses you, even if he doesn't say it." Her eyes softened with emotion, but she wiped her tears quickly, because her job wasn't to cry, it was to serve.
The front door closed behind Michael Harrison. The sound echoed through the mansion. Then, silence. No footsteps, no voices, no business calls, just the quiet hum of a lonely house. Ruth Johnson stood still in the hallway for a moment, listening to the silence settle around her. She took a deep breath. This was the only time of day the mansion truly belonged to her. Ruth began her usual work, vacuuming the carpets, dusting the shelves, straightening the pillows. Her movements were slow and careful, like someone who respected every corner of the house. But her eyes kept drifting toward one specific place, the living room, where a small table stood near the window. On it was a framed photograph, Sarah Harrison, smiling, peaceful, alive in memory. Ruth walked over gently. She touched the photo frame as if it were fragile glass from a different world. From her pocket, she pulled out a tiny white candle. Nothing fancy, just a simple candle. She placed it beside the photo and lit it carefully. The flame flickered softly. Ruth bowed her head. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Good afternoon, Miss Sarah. I hope heaven is treating you kindly today." Her words were slow, respectful, full of heart. Then, quietly, Ruth began to sing. Not loudly, not for anyone to hear, just for the soul of a woman she had loved like family. A soft gospel hymn, the same song Sarah used to hum while cooking in the kitchen years ago. Ruth's voice wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and honesty has its own beauty. As the song continued, Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She remembered Sarah's kindness, how Sarah always asked about her son, how Sarah remembered her birthday, how Sarah treated her like a person, not just a worker. Ruth wiped her face with her sleeve. "I miss you, ma'am," she whispered. "You made this house feel like a home." Ruth clasped her hands together. "Please watch over Mr. Harrison," she prayed. "He hides his pain behind money and work. He needs healing more than he knows." She paused. "And his son. Bring them back together." Her voice cracked, but she kept praying. This wasn't part of her job. No one paid her for this. No one even knew about it. But Ruth believed something deeply. A house without love is just a building, and even buildings need a soul. After a few moments, Ruth gently blew out the candle. She straightened the photo, smiled softly. Then she returned to her cleaning. To the world, she was just a maid, but in her heart, she was the guardian of a broken family's memories.
Michael Harrison's black luxury sedan moved slowly through the city traffic. This wasn't part of the plan. For the first time in years, he had canceled a meeting, not because of business, not because of money, because he was tired. Tired of numbers, tired of boardrooms, tired of pretending everything was fine. He leaned back in his seat, staring out the window as buildings passed by. Somewhere deep inside, something felt different today. His phone buzzed. "Sir, should I reschedule the 3 p.m. meeting?" Michael hesitated. Then he said something he had never said before. "No, I'm going home." The assistant paused in shock. "Home, sir?" "Yes, right now." The mansion gates opened slowly. The security guard looked surprised. "Everything okay, Mr. Harrison?" Michael nodded. Just an early day. But inside, even Michael didn't understand why his heart was beating faster. Michael stepped inside. The house felt different. Not quiet. Peaceful. Then he heard something. A soft sound. Not a TV. Not music from a phone. A human voice. Singing. The song drifted through the hallway. Gentle, soulful, emotional. It wasn't loud, but it carried feeling. Michael stopped walking. His chest tightened. That song. He recognized it. It was Sarah's favorite. Michael followed the voice. Each step felt heavier. The closer he got, the more memories returned. Sarah in the kitchen,
Sarah smiling, Sarah singing that same song. His eyes began to burn, but he kept walking. He reached the living room and froze. Ruth was kneeling beside the photo frame. A candle flickered softly. Her hands were folded in prayer. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she sang. She didn't know she wasn't alone. Michael's breath caught in his throat. His powerful, confident posture disappeared. In its place stood a broken man, watching someone honor the woman he loved better than he ever had. He whispered to himself, "She remembers her more than I do." His eyes filled with tears, but he didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. Ruth's voice softened. "Please take care of Mr. Harrison," she whispered. "He carries too much pain alone." Michael felt the words hit his heart like thunder. No one had ever prayed for him before. Not like this. Ruth finished her prayer and slowly stood up. That's when she saw him, Michael, standing in the doorway, watching. Her face turned pale. "Oh my God, sir, I'm so sorry." She rushed to blow out the candle. "I wasn't trying to disrespect the house." But Michael raised his hand. His voice was shaking. "No, don't stop." Ruth froze. Michael's eyes were wet. His voice cracked. "That was Sarah's song." Silence filled the room. Ruth looked down. "I know, sir," she whispered. "She used to sing it every afternoon." Michael swallowed hard. Why are you doing this?" Ruth hesitated, then softly said, "Because someone has to remember her." That sentence broke him.
The room felt different now. The candle was still glowing softly. The photo of Sarah stood quietly on the table, and Michael Harrison was still standing there in silence. Ruth held her hands together, nervous. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "I never meant to cross any boundaries." Michael shook his head slowly. "No, you didn't cross anything." His voice was low, gentle, not the voice of a powerful CEO, but of a man who was hurting. He walked closer to the photo. "I stopped coming in here," he admitted. "Every time I saw her face, it felt like my chest was breaking." Ruth nodded. "Grief doesn't leave, sir. It just changes shape." Michael took a deep breath. "When Sarah died, I didn't know how to live anymore." His eyes stayed on the photo. "So I worked. I built more buildings, made more money, stayed busy." He let out a bitter laugh. "Busy enough to avoid feeling." Ruth listened quietly. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can give someone is your attention. Ruth spoke gently. "Sarah loved this house, but she loved people more." Michael looked at her. "She used to tell me," Ruth continued, "Ruth, money builds walls, but love builds homes." Michael's throat tightened. "That sounds like her," he whispered. For the first time in years, Michael didn't hold it in. Tears rolled down his face. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, honest pain. "I never even said goodbye properly," he admitted. "I was on a business trip when she passed." Ruth stepped closer. "You honor her now by remembering her," she said, "and by letting yourself feel." Ruth hesitated. "There's something else, sir. I never told you." Michael turned. "What is it?" Ruth reached into her bag and pulled out an old folded envelope. "She asked me to give you this," she said, "but I was afraid it would hurt you." Michael slowly took the letter. His hands were shaking. He opened it. Sarah's handwriting. His eyes moved across the page. My love, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye. Please don't close your heart. Our love wasn't meant to end with me. Live, love, heal. I'll always be with you. Sarah. Michael covered his face. His shoulders shook. Years of pain finally came out. Ruth placed her hand gently on his arm. You're not alone, Mr. Harrison, she said. You never were. Michael looked at her. For the first time in 12 years, he truly saw her, not as a maid, not as staff, but as a human being. Thank you, Ruth, he said softly, for reminding me how to feel again. She smiled.
The mansion felt warmer now, not because of the sunlight, but because something inside Michael Harrison had finally started to heal. He sat at the dining table, the same place where he used to eat alone in silence. Ruth stood nearby, unsure of what to do. For years she had kept her distance, but today was different. Ruth, Michael said gently, sit down for a moment. She hesitated. Sir, I still have work to... This is more important. Slowly, Ruth took a seat. Michael folded his hands. You've worked here for 12 years, he said, but I barely know anything about you. Ruth smiled softly. I never wanted to be a burden, sir. Michael shook his head. You were never a burden. You were a blessing I failed to notice. Ruth's eyes filled with emotion. My husband passed away 10 years ago, Ruth began. Cancer. Michael's expression softened. I raised my son alone. Now he works 2 jobs. She paused. My grandson, he's very sick. Heart condition. Michael looked up sharply. Why didn't you say anything? Ruth gave a small, sad smile. Some people clean houses, sir. Some people carry storms quietly. Ruth explained how she sold her wedding ring, skipped meals, worked night shifts, gave up rest, all to pay for her grandson's medicine. I pray every night, she said, not for money, just for strength. Michael's eyes burned with tears. You never asked me for help, Michael said. Ruth shook her head. I didn't want pity. I wanted dignity. Those words hit him harder than any business loss ever had. Michael stood up. Ruth, you have given more to this house than anyone ever will. He took out his phone. From today, your grandson's medical bills are covered. Ruth gasped. Sir, I can't accept. You already have, he said softly, by giving your heart to this family. Tears streamed down Ruth's face. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, she whispered. You didn't just help my family. You restored my faith. Michael smiled. And you restored my soul.
That night, Michael Harrison couldn't sleep. The mansion was silent, but his mind was loud. Ruth's words echoed in his head. Some people carry storms quietly. Michael sat on the edge of his bed, holding his phone. One name stared back at him. Daniel Harrison, his son. They hadn't spoken properly in 8 years. After Sarah's death, Michael had buried himself in work. Daniel had buried himself in anger. His son needed a father. Michael gave him a business empire. Daniel asked for time. Michael gave him money. And slowly, they lost each other. Michael's thumb hovered over the call button. Then he stopped. What if he doesn't answer? What if he doesn't care? The fear of rejection was stronger than the fear of loneliness. So Michael put the phone down, again. The next morning, Ruth noticed the tired look in Michael's eyes. You didn't rest well, sir, she said gently. Michael sighed. I was thinking about my son. Ruth nodded slowly. He still loves you, she said. Michael looked up. How do you know? Ruth hesitated, then said something shocking. Because He calls me. Michael stood up. He calls you? Ruth nodded. Sometimes when he feels lost. She explained that Daniel used to call the mansion, hoping to speak to his father, but Michael was always in meetings, so Daniel spoke to Ruth instead. They talked about life, about grief, about missing Sarah. He never stopped caring, Ruth said. He just stopped hoping. Michael's eyes filled with regret. I failed him, Michael whispered. Ruth shook her head. You didn't fail him. You just forgot how to be a father. Silence filled the room. Then Ruth reached into her pocket. He asked me to give you this, she said. She handed Michael a folded note. Michael opened it slowly. Dad, I don't need your money. I just want you back. Daniel. Michael's hands trembled. 8 years of silence in one sentence. Michael looked at Ruth. Do you think he'll talk to me? Ruth smiled softly. He's been waiting for you longer than you know. Michael picked up his phone. This time he didn't hesitate. He pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Michael's heart pounded. Then, hello? Daniel's voice, older, stronger, still his son. Michael swallowed hard. It's me. Silence. Then a soft reply. I know, Dad.
The cafe was quiet, just the soft clinking of cups and distant city noise outside. Michael Harrison sat at a cornered table, his hands shaking slightly around his coffee. Across from him sat the man he hadn't truly seen in 8 years, his son, Daniel Harrison, older now, stronger, but carrying the same pain in his eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't know how. Years of distance don't disappear in seconds. Michael cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. Daniel nodded. I almost didn't. Michael felt that. I was angry, Daniel admitted. Not because Mom died, but because you disappeared too. Michael looked down. I thought working harder would protect us. Daniel shook his head. It just pushed me away. The words weren't loud, but they were heavy. Michael's voice cracked. I failed you, son. Daniel's eyes softened. You weren't the only one hurting, Dad. Silence filled the space again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was honest. Michael slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out Sarah's letter. She wanted us to heal, he said, not break apart. Daniel swallowed hard. I miss her every day. Michael nodded. So do I. Michael stood up. Daniel hesitated, then stood too. They didn't rush. They didn't speak. They just hugged, not like strangers, like father and son who had finally found their way back. Daniel whispered, I never stopped needing you. Michael replied, I'm here now. Across the street, Ruth watched from a distance. She smiled. No recognition, no praise, just quiet satisfaction. Because sometimes the best heroes stay unseen.
The mansion felt different these days. Not quieter, not louder, warmer. Laughter echoed through the halls again. Family photos slowly returned to the walls, and for the first time in years, Michael Harrison's home felt like a home. But one person still worked silently in the background. Ruth. Ruth moved through the kitchen, wiping counters, organizing shelves, humming softly to herself. She didn't ask for attention. She never expected praise. Helping others was simply who she was. She had no idea that something special was waiting for her. Michael stood in the living room with Daniel beside him. She doesn't do any of this for money, Daniel said, but she deserves more than a paycheck. Michael nodded. She gave us our family back. He looked toward the hallway. It's time we gave her something, too.
"Ruth," Michael called gently, "could you come here for a moment?" Ruth wiped her hands on her apron. "Yes, sir?" She walked in, expecting another simple request, but instead she saw something unusual: a small table, a wrapped gift, and 2 smiling faces. "This isn't about work," Michael said. "This is about gratitude." Ruth looked confused. "I was just doing my job," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "You did more than that. You saved our family." Michael handed her the gift. Ruth's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a folder, house papers, a small, beautiful home near the hospital where her grandson was treated. Her knees nearly gave out. You bought me a house?" she whispered. Michael smiled. "A home, because you helped us find ours." Tears streamed down Ruth's face. "I never asked for anything," she said. Michael replied, "And that's exactly why you deserve everything." Ruth held the papers close to her heart. "For the first time," she said, "my family won't be afraid of tomorrow." Daniel stepped forward and hugged her. "Thank you for never giving up on us." Ruth cried quietly into his shoulder. Michael looked around the room. Money builds houses, but kindness builds lives. Ruth nodded. Love is the greatest wealth of all.
Months passed. The mansion that once felt empty was now full of life. Daniel visited often. Laughter returned to the dining table, and photos of Sarah were no longer hidden away. They were honored. But the biggest change wasn't in the house. It was in Michael Harrison's heart. Michael no longer rushed through life. He listened. He smiled. He made time. And every morning he greeted Ruth with the same words, "Good morning, family." Ruth would smile like she still couldn't believe it. Ruth moved into her new home. Her grandson's health improved. Her sister received proper care. Her life was finally peaceful. But she never forgot where she came from. She still prayed, still helped others, still carried love quietly, because that was her true wealth. One day, Michael stood at a charity event, cameras flashing, crowds watching. But his speech wasn't about money. It was about Ruth. "There was a woman in my house who cleaned more than floors. She cleaned my heart." The crowd went silent. "She taught me that kindness is more powerful than success." Michael looked into the camera. Never underestimate someone because of their job. Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who save us. Ruth stood beside him, smiling softly, not as a maid, not as staff, but as family. The sun shined behind them, and for the first time in years, Michael Harrison felt truly rich, not in money, but in love. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and comment. Love changes everything, because the smallest kindness can create the biggest miracles.